Imagine this for a moment. There is one type of person. An avoidant never truly forgets. One person they replay in their mind late at night. One person they secretly compare everyone else to. And here's the shocking part. This person is usually not the one who loved them the most, treated them the best, or stayed the longest. Instead, it's the person who felt distant, emotionally unavailable, unpredictable, and just out of reach. Avoidants don't stay obsessed with everyone. They stay obsessed with one very specific type of person. And the reason for it goes deeper than attraction, deeper than personality, deeper than logic. It goes straight into the nervous system, straight into childhood, straight into emotional survival. And if you've ever felt an avoidant pulling away but still somehow orbiting around you emotionally, this is going to explain everything. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear may completely change how you see them and how you see yourself. When people hear the word obsessed, they imagine texting non-stop, chasing, begging, and clinging. But avoidants don't obsess like that. Their obsession is silent, it's quiet, it's hidden. They can go days, weeks, even months without reaching out. And yet internally they are replaying moments, replaying conversations, replaying the way you looked at them when you walked away. Their obsession lives in memory, fantasy, and emotional distance. It shows up as sudden curiosity, unexpected jealousy, random nostalgia, and that strange feeling that they never fully let you go, even when they are with someone else. Avoidants don't chase the way anxious people do. They withdraw, detach, and disappear. But their mind holds on to a very specific emotional imprint. Most people believe avoidants simply don't care. They think avoidants are cold, heartless, selfish, incapable of love. That's the biggest myth in modern dating. Avoidants care deeply, sometimes more deeply than they can tolerate. Their nervous system learned that closeness equals danger, loss of control, or emotional overwhelm. So they shut down, not because they feel nothing, but because they feel too much and don't know how to process it. They learn to survive by disconnecting, by becoming self-sufficient, by relying on logic instead of vulnerability. But emotions don't disappear just because someone ignores them. They go underground, and underground emotions tend to obsess. Now here is the part that will shock most people. Avoidants tend to stay obsessed with one type of person, emotionally safe, yet emotionally unavailable individuals. People who feel familiar in a confusing, bittersweet way. People who don't chase, who don't demand, who don't fully open up. People who are warm but distant, loving but unpredictable, present but never fully reachable. This type of person triggers something deep inside the avoidant. It feels like home, even when it hurts. It feels like love, even when it's confusing. It feels familiar, even when it's painful. This pattern didn't start in adulthood. It started in childhood. When an avoidant was young, love may have felt conditional, inconsistent, or emotionally distant. Maybe caregivers were physically present, but emotionally unavailable. Maybe affection was unpredictable. Maybe vulnerability was ignored or discouraged. Over time, the child learned that closeness was risky, that relying on others led to disappointment, that emotions were something to hide. But the nervous system still learned what love felt like. And love for them felt like distance. It felt like unpredictability. It felt like longing for someone who was not fully there. So when they meet someone in adulthood who mirrors that emotional environment, their system lights up. Their brain says, "This is familiar, this is love, even if it hurts." That's why avoidance can lose interest in someone who is consistent, secure, and emotionally available. A healthy, stable partner can feel foreign, boring, or suffocating. Their nervous system doesn't recognize it as love. It doesn't trigger that familiar emotional hunger. Instead, it triggers discomfort. Safety can feel dangerous when chaos is what you grew up with. So they unconsciously gravitate toward people who recreate that emotional distance. And those are the people they never forget. Those are the people who stay in their mind long after the relationship ends. If you've ever wondered why an avoidant pulled away from someone who adored them, yet stayed emotionally stuck on someone who barely showed up, this is the reason. It's not about value, it's not about worth. It's about emotional programming. It's about the nervous system chasing a familiar wound, mistaking it for connection, and here's where it becomes deeply emotional. Because if you are that type of person, the one who didn't chase, the one who walked away, the one who stayed mysterious, the one who didn't fully open up, you may represent something unfinished inside them. Not just a relationship, not just a memory, but a childhood emotional pattern that never got resolved. You become a symbol, a trigger, a reminder of something they never healed. This is why avoidance can seem detached on the surface, but still hold on to you internally. This is why they may stalk your social media, think about you during quiet moments, compare others to you, or feel a strange emotional pull long after the connection ended. They are not obsessed with you as a person. They are obsessed with what you represent emotionally. And if this is resonating with you, take a moment to breathe. Because this isn't about you needing to be more available, more distant, more mysterious, or more loving. This is about understanding the emotional dance that happens beneath the surface. In the next part, we're going to explore why familiar pain feels like love, how this obsession cycle works, and what it means for your emotional power in these dynamics. When we say familiar pain feels like love, it isn't just a metaphor, it's literally how the nervous system works. Imagine your brain like a radar, constantly scanning for patterns it recognizes: pain, distance, unpredictability. These are not random triggers for an avoidant. They are signals their system was trained to recognize as love. The heart races when they feel tension or auromal unpredictability, not because it's good for them, but because it feels familiar. That ache in the chest when someone pulls away, that longing when someone seems just out of reach. That's not suffering. They have learned to interpret it as connection. And when someone finally mirrors that pattern, the brain rewards it with tiny bursts of dopamine, adrenaline, and emotional arousal. It is addictive in the most subtle, insidious way, making the avoidant feel drawn, compelled, and sometimes powerless to resist, even if their mind screams that it isn't healthy. And yet, this doesn't mean they consciously choose pain. They aren't cruel or manipulative by default. They are running the same old program over and over, replaying a script they learned before they even understood love. When an avoidant obsesses over someone, it often begins quietly, a memory, a thought, a what if, that keeps returning. Then comes reflection. Why did I feel so drawn to them? Why do I remember every little detail? The obsession doesn't always manifest externally, but internally. It can feel all-consuming. They might walk through life thinking they've moved on, yet every new partner, every fleeting interaction, subtly compares to that unresolved emotional memory. It's invisible to the outside world, but vivid and alive within them. This is why avoidants lose interest in secure, consistent partners so quickly. A person who is emotionally reliable, present, and nurturing breaks the pattern the avoidance system expects. Safety, in a strange twist, can feel threatening. Their nervous system doesn't recognize calm love as love. It recognizes it as ordinary, unexciting, unprovocative. And while the secure partner may represent what a healthy relationship looks like, the avoidant often finds themselves yearning for the person who was unpredictable, distant, and emotionally inconsistent. The person who mirrored their earliest experiences of attachment. That dissonance is why they might appear cold or detached, yet still feel an emotional tether to someone else. It's confusing even for them, and if you've ever tried to win over an avoidant with stability, affection, and honesty, only to watch them drift towards someone distant, now you know why. Then comes the push-pull cycle, the heartbeat of the obsession. Avoidants oscillate between approach and withdrawal, not because they are fickle, but because their nervous system alternates between craving closeness and fearing it. When someone is just out of reach, their mind and body light up. When someone leans in, offers warmth, or demands emotional engagement, alarm bells ring. It's an internal tug-of-war that can feel like emotional torture to both parties. This is why many people describe avoidance as mysterious, unpredictable, or maddening. They are trapped in an unconscious cycle they didn't create consciously. The obsession thrives precisely in this tension, where desire and fear coexist, creating endless mental loops, fantasies, and what-ifs. It is exhausting for the avoidant and even more exhausting for the person they are fixated on. Perhaps the most painful aspect of this obsession is the one that got away phenomenon. The avoidant often romanticizes a past connection that never fully materialized, replaying it endlessly in their imagination. Every moment, every conversation, every subtle interaction is magnified and stored as if it holds the key to something they never fully understood. They may idealize this person, forgetting the realities of the relationship, the conflicts, the distance, the emotional pushback. The memory becomes a kind of emotional mirage, a mix of longing, nostalgia, and unresolved desire. And while this fixation can feel obsessive, it is deeply rooted in the avoidant's need to resolve what was once incomplete in their emotional development. It is never about possession or control. It is about reconciling the patterns they experienced as a child. And this is where the mind replay begins. The avoidant will run through scenarios repeatedly. What if I had said this? What if I had acted differently? They will imagine conversations, arguments, reconciliations, and moments of connection, all from the safety of their internal world. This rumination allows them to engage in the relationship without risking vulnerability in real life. It is safe because it is entirely mental. But while it may feel like emotional control, it is they are tethered to someone they cannot fully have, thinking about possibilities, wondering what might have been, and measuring every new person against a memory. And every time their brain does this, it releases subtle emotional rewards. A bittersweet cocktail of longing and comfort that keeps them looping back to that one person. Now, it's crucial to understand the distinction between trauma bonds and true love. Many people mistake obsession for affection, attraction, or real love, but in avoidance, obsession often arises from unresolved attachment wounds. The longing, the comparison, the replayed memories, these are not signs of deep emotional connection in a healthy sense. They are signs of emotional imprinting, a nervous system wired to repeat what it knows. True love involves reciprocity, safety, consistency, and emotional presence. Obsession, on the other hand, thrives in absence, unpredictability, and emotional incompleteness. And for the avoidant, these two things are often indistinguishable, so they may believe they are in love with someone, when in reality they are in love with the emotional pattern that person represents. The ego plays its part as well. Avoidants often chase the unreachable, not only because of nervous system imprinting, but also because of the psychological thrill of challenge. The person who is emotionally distant validates their sense of power, independence, and self-worth. If someone is always chasing them, always appearing elusive, it reinforces their identity as the self-sufficient, untouchable, autonomous individual. Paradoxically, the obsession grows strongest when the other person is least available, because in their minds, worthiness is tied to effort and conquest rather than emotional intimacy. It is a subtle, self-reinforcing loop that can last years, if not decades, because it touches both the heart and the ego simultaneously. And if you've ever noticed an avoidant suddenly resurfacing after a long period of silence, wondering why they reach out or miss you, this explains it. Absence doesn't create affection. It triggers the nervous system's imprint, activating longing for a familiar emotional pattern. They might appear calm, distant, or aloof on the surface, but inside, their system is flooded with echoes of unresolved attachment. That longing, that obsessive reflection, is automatic. It isn't always rational and it isn't always controllable. And it's exactly why so many people feel caught in the orbit of someone who seems emotionally unavailable but inexplicably drawn to them, over and over again. Finally, it's important to recognize the signs you are the type they obsess over. Avoidants are often drawn to people who are emotionally self-sufficient, mysterious, slightly unavailable, and unpredictable in subtle ways. You may notice they pay attention in unusual ways through quiet observation, lingering thoughts, sporadic contact, or subtle interest, but they never fully engage emotionally in a consistent manner. These behaviors are not random. They are the fingerprints of obsession linked to unresolved attachment patterns. And while it may feel confusing, frustrating, or even painful, understanding this dynamic gives you clarity. You are not being ignored because you are unworthy. You are being mirrored as part of a deeper psychological pattern they cannot fully resolve. If you're hearing all of this and feeling it resonate, it's time to pause and recognize your own power. This obsession, while emotionally intense, is not a reflection of your value. It is a reflection of unresolved patterns within the avoidant, patterns they often cannot name, let alone change on their own. You are not responsible for fixing them. And knowing this, you can begin to see the situation with clarity. Why they are drawn to one type of person, why they replay relationships in their mind, and why sometimes, even in the presence of someone stable, loving, and consistent, they remain secretly tethered to someone else entirely. It is not about you failing them. It is about them carrying the echoes of the past, replaying the familiar over and over, unable to break free without awareness, intention, and healing. Now it's time to face a truth that many avoidants themselves don't fully realize. Obsession is rarely about love. It's about unresolved wounds. The memories, the longing, the quiet fixation, it's all rooted in emotional patterns formed long before they understood attachment, intimacy, or trust. When an avoidant obsesses, it's less about who you are and more about what you represent in their internal world. You may be unaware, but you are a mirror, a symbol, a placeholder for a wound that never fully healed. Every glance, every gesture, every word becomes encoded in their mind as part of a pattern they cannot escape. And this is why sometimes, no matter how consistent, nurturing, or available you are, they remain tethered to someone else or a memory of someone else. It is a painful cycle, but it's deeply human, and it is not a reflection of your worth. You might wonder, if they are stuck in this pattern, does that mean they can never love fully? The truth is more nuanced. Avoidants are capable of deep, meaningful love, but only when they consciously recognize their patterns and actively choose to work through them. Until then, their obsession will pull them toward familiar emotional echoes rather than healthy connections. The ones they can't get over are often the ones who trigger the exact emotional dynamics they learned in childhood: distance, unpredictability, longing, and subtle tension. And while it may feel like rejection or indifference to you, for them it feels like magnetic pull, a relentless internal drive that they struggle to understand or control. This internal drive is why obsession manifests in mental replay. They will imagine conversations that never happened, remember details no one else would notice, and idealize moments they experienced long ago. Every interaction, every fleeting memory becomes a replayed scene in their mind. The mind becomes a theater, and the avoidant is both audience and actor, replaying scenarios of closeness and distance, what-ifs and if-onlys. This mental loop is their way of experiencing the connection safely, without risking vulnerability in the real world. But for those on the outside, it creates confusion, frustration, and sometimes a feeling of being haunted by someone who isn't fully present, yet never truly gone. The obsession also feeds on uncertainty. When someone is unpredictable, their emotional distance fluctuates, or they remain somewhat unattainable, the avoidance nervous system interprets this as excitement and engagement. It mimics the early attachment experiences, where love was conditional or inconsistent. Each moment of unpredictability triggers a subtle cocktail of adrenaline and dopamine, reinforcing the obsession even further. It is addictive, not in a malicious sense, but in a deeply wired neurological one. And it explains why avoidants often appear drawn to people who mirror the emotional inconsistencies they experienced as children. Their obsession is a loop, repeated until awareness and conscious change intervene. Now imagine the emotional weight this creates for the person who is the target of this obsession. On one hand, they may feel noticed, desired, or uniquely special. After all, the avoidant does think of them, idealizes them, and even remembers details no one else would. But on the other hand, they feel confusion, mixed signals, and a persistent sense of incompleteness. It is an emotional dance that can leave a person doubting their own value, wondering if they are enough, or questioning why the avoidant cannot fully commit. And the truth is, the avoidance fixation is rarely about the other person's shortcomings. It is about the unresolved patterns they carry inside. You are not the cause of their obsession. You are the mirror of something they have yet to heal. So, how can someone recognize they are the type of person an avoidant obsesses over? There are subtle signs that go beyond obvious attention or flirtation. They are drawn to people who are emotionally self-sufficient, resilient, and slightly unpredictable. People who do not chase, who maintain their own boundaries, and who live life on their own terms. These traits mirror the early experiences of emotional distance that shaped the avoidance attachment style. You may notice that they are drawn to your presence, but when closeness increases, they may retreat. This push-pull dynamic is not a reflection of your value. It is a reflection of the emotional environment they were wired to seek. You become both the safe and the unreachable, the familiar and the mysterious, a living representation of what their nervous system craves, yet fears. And if you've ever been on the receiving end of sudden attention after long silence, or noticed them resurfacing in your life unpredictably, it all makes sense now. Their obsession is triggered not by external circumstances, but by internal patterns that are automatically activated. They may reach out, appear curious, or create subtle opportunities to reconnect, but it is often unconscious. It is a nervous system reaching for familiarity, a mind replaying unresolved attachment, and a heart attempting to reconcile longing and fear simultaneously. You are not the problem. You are the symbol, the anchor in a pattern that exists inside them, independent of your actions, intentions, or behavior. Understanding this dynamic is liberating in a way, because it separates your self-worth from their behavior. You are not responsible for their patterns, their obsession, or their inability to fully engage. You can witness it, acknowledge it, and understand it without absorbing it. This perspective allows you to step out of confusion, frustration, or self-doubt and into clarity. You can recognize the obsession for what it is, an echo of unresolved emotional wounds replayed through someone who reflects their deepest patterns. And once you see it this way, you can begin to approach the situation from empowerment rather than attachment, from awareness rather than compulsion, and from healing rather than longing. At the same time, it's important to honor your own feelings in this dynamic. If you are emotionally entangled with someone who exhibits avoidant obsession, your emotional experience is real and valid. You may feel longing, confusion, anger, or sadness, and these emotions are natural responses to the push-pull, inconsistent energy they project. You are not imagining it, and it is not your fault. Acknowledging your feelings, setting boundaries, and maintaining clarity about your own value are essential steps in navigating this type of connection. You can observe the avoidance obsession without being consumed by it, because their fixation is about their internal patterns, not about your worth or your adequacy as a partner or friend. Finally, it is essential to understand that the avoidance obsession is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it creates intensity, mystery, and depth in the relationship, or at least in the memories of it. On the other hand, it brings confusion, inconsistency, and emotional turbulence. Their mind may dwell on you, idealize you, and replay scenarios endlessly, but this does not necessarily translate into healthy love or stability. For anyone caught in this orbit, recognizing the distinction between their obsession and genuine connection is critical. Obsession can exist without reciprocity, without commitment, and without growth. And when you see it clearly, you gain power, understanding, and the ability to protect your own emotional well-being. So what do you do if you realize an avoidant is obsessed with you, or that someone you care about is silently tethered to you in ways that feel confusing or overwhelming? The first step is clarity. Understand that their fixation is not about your shortcomings, your mistakes, or anything you could have done differently. It is about the unresolved emotional patterns they carry inside and the nervous system loops that have been running for years. Once you grasp this, you can begin to approach the situation with detachment, but not coldness, with awareness, but not avoidance, with empathy, but not absorption. You have the power to step into your own emotional space while observing the patterns that play out around you. Boundaries become your most powerful tool. This doesn't mean pushing someone away or acting indifferent. It means defining what you will accept emotionally, mentally, and energetically. It means recognizing when engagement drains you rather than nurtures you. It means honoring your own emotions and needs above the invisible pull of someone else's obsession. Avoidants often test boundaries, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unconsciously, because boundaries trigger their internal mirrors, the exact loops they are obsessed with. But staying firm, consistent, and compassionate allows you to protect your energy while still engaging with clarity. This is not rejection. This is self-respect. Another crucial point is consistency, not chasing. Many people, upon noticing an avoidance obsession, feel compelled to respond to every signal, every text, every subtle approach. This is natural, but it often plays into the cycle of attachment and obsession. Avoidants are drawn to people who maintain their own lives, priorities, and emotional equilibrium. By being steady, consistent, and centered, you create an energy that is both grounding and unattainable in the best possible way, unavailable not through games but through self-sovereignty. And this is the paradox. The more you stabilize yourself, the less chaotic the pattern becomes, and the more the avoidant is forced to confront their internal loops rather than projecting them onto you. Yet, it's important to address the human side of this dynamic. Obsession is rarely malicious, but it can be painful. The avoidance longing, their mental replay, and their intermittent contact can stir intense emotions in those around them. You may feel moments of elation, hope, or connection, only to be met with sudden withdrawal, silence, or detachment. This emotional roller coaster can leave you questioning yourself, doubting your value, or wondering why they cannot fully commit. The truth, again, is that this is not a reflection of your worth. It is the manifestation of a deeply ingrained pattern that predates you. Recognizing this allows you to navigate the relationship or your memories of it with understanding rather than confusion or self-blame. And here comes the shocking truth, the piece that changes everything. Avoidants don't obsess over people. They obsess over unresolved emotional wounds. You are not just a person in their life, you are a symbol, a placeholder, a living representation of patterns that began long before you arrived. This is why their attention often feels magnetic, confusing, and intense. Yet their connection is inconsistent, unpredictable, and sometimes even unreachable. They are tethered not to you, but to what you represent in their emotional landscape. And the deeper you understand this, the more clarity you gain, the more freedom you reclaim, and the more power you have to choose your own emotional reality. Understanding this dynamic empowers you. It allows you to see obsession for what it truly is. A reflection of past wounds, a nervous system loop, a pattern repeated over and over. It frees you from taking responsibility for someone else's emotional cycles. You begin to realize that being drawn to you does not mean they will stay, that longing does not equal love, and that intensity is not always intimacy. You can witness their obsession without absorbing it. You can acknowledge it without participating in the emotional turmoil. And this awareness gives you the ultimate gift, emotional sovereignty. You can engage from a place of compassion, clarity, and presence rather than fear, need, or longing. Finally, the emotional closing. Remember that your value is not defined by someone else's obsession. Their patterns, their loops, their quiet fixations do not increase or diminish your worth. You are complete, worthy, and whole, regardless of whether an avoidant thinks of you, obsesses over you, or disappears from your life entirely. Walking away, standing firm in your boundaries, or simply observing with clarity does not diminish connections. It honors it in the healthiest way possible. The universe, life, and relationships respond not to obsession but to alignment, awareness, and self-respect. You have the ability to step fully into your power, to reclaim your emotional energy, and to choose connections that reflect safety, reciprocity, and true intimacy. And when you do, the energy of obsession loses its hold. The loops of the past finally begin to release, and both you and the avoidant, if they choose growth, can experience freedom, clarity, and the possibility of authentic love. So take a deep breath, center yourself, and know this: you are not responsible for fixing patterns that existed long before you. You are not the cause of the pull, the obsession, or the longing. You are, however, fully responsible for your own peace, your own boundaries, and your own emotional sovereignty. And that is where true power lives, steady, unshakable, and deeply aligned with who you are at your core. This is the truth about avoidance, obsession, and emotional patterns. It is not personal, it is not a judgment, and it is not a reflection of your worth. It is simply the human mind and heart repeating what it has learned, seeking resolution in ways it does not yet fully understand. And now, armed with awareness, clarity, and compassion, you can witness it, understand it, and navigate it without losing yourself.